It's only been 3 weeks since Musk took over at Twitter, and the word that people keep using to describe his actions so far is chaos. But is Musk really just being random, chaotic, and cruel? Is he simply that bad at managing people? That's entirely possible. But in this video, I want to make the argument that that would actually be the best case scenario. And we should all hope that he's just being an incompetent jerk. The far bigger threat is that everything Musk has done is part of a plan to turn Twitter into a very different kind of organization. One that will comply with anything he demands, even if it's something shady or illegal. Is that his goal? We're going to look at what Musk has done and compare it to the research from social psychology on how to promote compliance and conformity. Spoiler alert, it matches up perfectly. So what exactly has Musk done that caused all of this chaos? It's hard to keep up with the insanity, but here's a partial list of what Musk has done to Twitter so far. He laid off half the staff with 1 day's notice, and there's been more layoffs since. He removed all employees' right to work from home, and he did it in a 2:30 a.m. email, effective that same morning. He told software engineers to print code for code reviews. Yes, print it out. But then later told them to shred the printouts and just review the code on their laptops. He made blue check verifications the number one priority, but then had to retract them when people started abusing them to hilarious effect. He gave people insanely short deadlines for new projects and told them they would be fired if they were even 1 hour late. He called a same-day, late-night meeting of anyone who can actually code and used it to go over tech concepts that anyone should have learned on their first day at Twitter. People were also told to bring screenshots of salient code, whatever the hell that is. He fired employees for disagreeing with him on Twitter or internally. He demanded that employees sign a pledge to be extremely hardcore and work long hours. Anyone not signing it would be fired. He has constantly belittled Twitter's people and Twitter the product, and he has blamed any negative outcomes of his leadership, like the massive drop in ad revenue, on the media and a shady cabal of left-wing enemies. There's some new insanity every day, so I'm sure I've forgotten something. Let me know in a comment what I left out. Also, like and subscribe and all that if you want more science-based takes on good and bad workplaces. So what the hell is going on? People have been trying desperately to make sense of all of Musk's contradicting messages and actions. And I think there are currently three main theories. Some people think Musk is intentionally trying to sink Twitter, maybe because his financiers in Saudi Arabia, who now own a significant part of Twitter, want to limit access to the platform. Or maybe some of his right-wing backers like Peter Thiel wanted to eliminate what they saw as a left-wing dominated platform. Fact check, it wasn't. Others say Musk is having a psychological meltdown, kind of like Kanye West, and I will give them this. Before 2018, Musk's behavior was fairly normal, and since then it has just grown increasingly bizarre and polarizing, starting around the time of his infamous pedo tweet. Finally, some see his Twitter takeover as the billionaire's equivalent of a midlife crisis, like buying an overpowered sports car you don't have the skills to drive, and crashing it on the way out of the showroom. This theory has some merit. Musk himself admits he's a terrible manager, and a Tesla staff survey from 2018 absolutely confirms this. But again, I just want to make this point. Each of these three explanations would be a best case scenario. Musk's fans have a different explanation, of course. They say he's just driving away the weak and the woke, so the few remaining Ubermenschen can get on with creating Twitter 2.0, unencumbered by bureaucracy and soy boy coworkers. This is such obvious bullshit. None of what Musk has done has helped him identify and keep the best, the most skilled, or the most experienced people. In fact, a lot of what he's done has explicitly driven off many of the most competent employees. It's kind of a no-brainer, but when you treat your staff like crap, your best employees have the easiest time finding new jobs elsewhere. So no, I don't think he's having a meltdown, a midlife crisis, or is selecting employees for equality. I think he's selecting employees for compliance. It looks a lot like he's trying to keep not the best Twitter employees, but rather those who are willing to go along with anything Musk demands, either because they believe in him and his vision, because they're too psychologically vulnerable to resist, or because they're afraid to lose their jobs. Maybe they desperately need the income, or maybe they're in the US on a work visa and will have to leave the country if they're unemployed. Nothing Musk has done at Twitter so far makes sense if his goal is to make Twitter a profitable investment with the best employees. But everything he's done makes perfect sense if he's trying to make Twitter a conformist organization with employees that will never question anything he does or says. Conformity is defined as the act of matching attitudes, beliefs, and behaviors to group norms. And many experiments in social psychology have shown just how easy it is to get people to go along with beliefs or behaviors they know to be wrong or even illegal. One of my favorite examples is the Asch experiment. Participants were recruited to be part of an experiment in visual perception and told their task was to identify which of 3 lines was the same length as a reference line. In reality, only one person was an actual subject, and the rest were told to give wrong answers some of the time.
Only one of the people in the group is a real subject, the 5th person with the white t-shirt. The experiment begins uneventfully as subjects give their judgments.
2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 3, 3, 3, 3.
But on the 3rd trial, something happens.
2, 2, 2, 2, 2.
The subject denies the evidence of his own eyes and yields to group influence. Asch found subjects went along with the group on 37% of the critical trials.
What gets me every time I watch this is that little hitch in the subject's voice when he gives an answer he full well knows is wrong. He doesn't go 2, he goes, 2.
2.
There are so many experiments that confirm how we conform and just how far it can go. Most famously, the Milgram experiment made subjects give other people what they believed were fatal electric shocks, simply because a researcher in a lab coat told them that the experiment requires that you continue.
150 volts.
Oh. Experiment, that's all. Get me out of here. Get me out of here, please.
Continue, please. Go right on.
I refuse to go on. Let me out.
He refuses to go on.
The experiment requires you continue, teacher. Please continue.
You're gonna get a shock. 180 volts.
2/3 of volunteers were prepared to administer a potentially fatal electric shock when encouraged to do so by what they perceived as a legitimate authority figure. In this case, a man in a white coat.
Research also shows that conformity can be boosted in a number of ways. There are things you can do to people to make them more likely to comply and conform. When an authority figure gives the order, people are more likely to conform. Musk is a celebrity, a billionaire, and the owner and CEO of Twitter. Some of his first acts at Twitter was to get rid of the rest of the top management and the board. He may just be the ultimate authority figure to ever authority figure. Time pressure has been shown to make people more compliant, and Musk has made sure to give employees very little time to accept all his insane demands, like the extremely hardcore pledge. If you punish non-compliance, people tend to be more compliant. Duh. Musk has done just that by summarily firing people who are critical of him on Twitter or on internal Slack channels. Research shows that if you tell people that a task is important, they're more likely to conform. This may seem counterintuitive. Shouldn't people be more willing to go along with falsehoods and morally dubious actions on tasks that don't really matter? Well, it turns out that the more important a task seems to the subject, the more pressure there is on that person to comply. And Musk has, of course, stated that his Twitter is the only effective free speech platform and therefore essential for democracy to function. He also said in an all-hands meeting to staff that Twitter might go bankrupt, further increasing the importance and therefore making employees more likely to comply. It's also worth noting how many of Musk's actions and statements contradict themselves. First, blue checkmark verification is the most important thing, then it's gone. Then it will be back in a week, then it will be back when we've reviewed it carefully. First there's a layoff, then a ton of employees are asked back. First he announces that no accounts will be reinstated without review by a content moderation council, and then he brings back Trump after a bogus Twitter poll. One moment he says he wants Twitter to be the most trusted news source. The next he's tweeting right-wing conspiracy theories about the attack on Paul Pelosi. One moment he's all smiles and kind words when he meets with a group of Twitter software engineers. The next, he's calling the Twitter code ineffective. And by the way, doing it in a way that clearly shows he has no idea what he's talking about. The list goes on. This all seems so pointless. And that's the point. These contradicting actions and statements seem designed to drive away anyone with a backbone, anyone with a mind of their own, and to groom anyone who stays at Twitter into blindly accepting anything that comes from Musk, no matter how bizarre or self-contradicting. And here's the thing. We have seen scarily similar leadership in Silicon Valley before. What Musk is doing at Twitter matches up nearly point for point with how Elizabeth Holmes ran Theranos. If you're not familiar, Elizabeth Holmes founded a company called Theranos to build machines that could do dozens of medical tests quickly from just one drop of blood. These machines were supposed to revolutionize healthcare, and she became the darling of Silicon Valley and attracted billions in funding. Sadly, it was all lies, and just recently, Holmes was convicted and sentenced to 11 years in prison. The excellent book, Bad Blood, by John Carreyrou is based on tons of interviews with Theranos employees who describe Holmes's leadership style.
She overpromised every step of the way, and it got to a point where the promises and the reality, the gap between them was so enormous that it became a massive fraud. Now, why did employees not blow the whistle earlier? Theranos had a culture of fear, intimidation, and secrecy. Elizabeth's boyfriend was the number 2 of the company, Sunny Balwani. He was the enforcer of that culture. He was constantly firing people. Theranos was litigious. It was clear that she would sue anyone who spoke up.
She would change moods at the drop of a hat. She could be friendly, supportive, and open, but would turn on a dime and become threatening, cold, and abusive to people who got on her bad side. She fired people for not obeying her orders, even orders that were dubious or illegal. She demanded that employees work long hours, and she herself claimed to always be working. In an interview, she said, "I work all the time. I'm basically in the office from the time I wake up and then working until I go to sleep every day." She blamed any troubles the company had on the media and a shady cabal of enemies. She had a grandiose vision for the future of the company, which she said would change the world. Does any of that sound familiar? It should. Since Musk took over at Twitter, he has been following the exact same playbook. The question is this: why did Holmes and Musk do these things? Well, in the case of Theranos and Holmes, it was all in the service of financial fraud. Holmes knew that her product could never do what she had promised, and that the impressive sales projections that she used to attract funding were completely unrealistic. Many people at the company knew this too, so she desperately needed to make sure that they didn't speak up internally, or worse, went to the media. Now, Musk uses the exact same tactics, but does he have the same goals? I can imagine 2 reasons why Musk might be trying to create a more compliant Twitter. First, he might be trying to create a Twitter where he can put his thumb on the scale and influence global conversations to his advantage. We already know some of his political goals. He himself says he supports the Republicans in the US and is in favor of Ukraine giving up land to Russia to end the war. Could Musk be trying to create a Twitter where he can amplify arguments he likes and silence those he doesn't in order to create outcomes he or his financial backers want? For instance, he is desperately trying to bring Trump back, and many people are already seeing a sharp uptick in right-wing content on Twitter. The other reason he might be doing this is for the exact same reason as Holmes at Theranos. Maybe he knows deep down that his promises to make Twitter profitable through subscriptions or banking or video or whatever the hell his next idea is going to be are completely unrealistic, at least in the short to medium term. If that is so, he would desperately need to make sure that no one at Twitter speaks up and says so. It could even be a bit of both. I can't know that. But it would very neatly explain nearly everything Musk has done at Twitter. If he is trying to pull something shady, he will need compliance from Twitter's staff. And everything he's done at Twitter makes sense when seen through that lens. If that is not his goal, then nothing he's done at Twitter makes sense. It would even explain why Twitter is hiring again. Musk has been incredibly vocal about all of these changes, so he can be fairly sure that anyone who applies to work at Twitter going forward either believes in his vision for a future Twitter or is willing to be completely compliant and go along with nearly anything. Now, I'm not saying that what Musk has done at Twitter isn't random and cruel. I'm saying that maybe the randomness and the cruelty are the point, and they're explicitly designed to drive off anyone willing to stand up for themselves and blow the whistle on unethical or illegal actions. I'm also not saying that Musk is some evil mastermind who has planned all of this. It seems more likely that he's doing it subconsciously out of a need to tightly control Twitter because he is under massive financial and psychological pressure to meet the goals and deliver the results set by him and his financial backers. It's also worth noting that he's done many of the same things at Tesla and SpaceX. It may just be more noticeable at Twitter because he's doing it way faster and to a group of people who have not been groomed for years to accept this kind of mistreatment and who have not developed strategies to deal with it. So just to be clear, conformity is bad. Companies need to create a culture where employees can voice their disagreements with managers and where managers actually listen to their employees. Conformity is what enabled Enron, the Volkswagen emissions scandal, WorldCom, Theranos, and so many other corporate frauds. Elizabeth Holmes created a culture of fear and compliance at Theranos and was only brought down when two brave young employees blew the whistle and exposed the company's crimes to regulators and journalists. Is the same thing going to happen to Musk and Twitter? It seems likely. One Twitter lawyer even wrote on an internal Slack channel that Elon has shown that his only priority with Twitter users is how to monetize them. I do not believe that he cares about the human rights activists, the dissidents, our users in unmonetizable regions, and all the other users who have made Twitter the global town square you've all spent so long building and we all love. This lawyer then directly advised their coworkers to blow the whistle and gave them specific tips on how to do it. What do you think is going on? Is Musk having a midlife crisis? Is he trying to sink Twitter? Is he just a terrible manager? Well, that last part seems certain. But is he also a terrible manager with a sinister plan? Let me know what you think in a comment. Also, give me your best guess for Twitter's future. I am more and more convinced that the clock is winding down on this company and that it has, at best, months left in its current form. But I guess we'll see.